faint call of a cuckoo. This is Misson Carr, as many of you will probably know, those that watch these moth trapping videos. And yes, this is another one in a short space of time. It's been the third time that I've trapped within the space of a week, and I'm doing so tonight because I really need to take advantage of the weather. It's going to turn more unsettled, and so guaranteed dry nights for the next week may not be guaranteed. So very pleasant temperatures. There is quite a good breeze. This part to the entrance here is sheltered, so we should be all right, and the sheet shouldn't blow away, but it is fixed to the gate. I wish that the mosquitoes were fixed to the gate. Look at this lot. And by the sounds of them, they are mosquitoes. I'm presuming they may be males. I need to take some back because I need to identify this species. I said I would do last year and I didn't. It'd be nice to know a name for what's biting the hell out of me. Oh, 21:10 and we're off and running. Just switch the light on, so it'll take a couple of minutes to get to full brightness and to warm up. We'll see what tonight has in store. It should be a decent night. I'm expecting easily over 20 species, and this is a little bit earlier than when I trapped here in May of last year. I think it might have been the 20th of May last year, and had a decent night. So we await the first moth, which means it's time for a cup of tea. Well, inundated with green carpets at the moment. I've had 5 or 6 in already, and common carpet. And the moth right at the side of the light is the first ruby tiger of the year. It'll take a while yet before moths really start to come in. The wind or breeze appears to be dropping, nowhere near as breezy as it was when I arrived here. So all the signs are promising. I'm trying to show you moths that I don't usually show you. And I don't usually show you this. This is a flame shoulder. It's quite dark for a flame shoulder, to be honest, this is. And normally that pale edging that you can see at the basal part of the wing, on that wing edge, that's usually a lot brighter than this. This is quite a dark individual. It's a very common moth though, very common species, one that occurs pretty much everywhere. It's regular at home in my garden. It's not very often. They sit still long enough like this, always flitting and buzzing about. There's several on the sheet, and had at least 4 in at the moment. So that's flame shoulder. It doesn't look much, but the specimen that I'll show you in the photograph looks considerably better than what this chap does. Well, regular viewers to this channel that have just switched this video on and just happened to come across this bit will probably know exactly where I am. This is very much a sheet typical of Misson Carr, and this is early in the year. Most of the activity is dipterous, lots of flies here, but we've got good numbers of moths coming in. Nothing spectacular at the moment. In fact, what has just come in is what looks to be our first peach blossom of the year. It's just going off the back edge of the sheet there. Several new species for the year. peach blossom is certainly the prize winner for the most attractive moth. I'll put a photo in, because there'll probably be more photos going in than videos of actual moths, because this place tends to get busy, as many of you will know, but this is still a quiet time of the year in terms of Misson Carr. Lots of beetles as well, lots of soldier beetles coming in. So on a nice busy sheet, that wind or breeze appears to have dropped further. There's certainly no effects of that breeze here as more moths come in. Time to tot up the totals. New species coming in all the time. The moth that is fluttering up the sheet has now just come down again as pebble hook tip. Just coming, there's 2 brown silver lines in, and as you can see there, a brimstone moth which is just spiraling up into the sky and off. Lots of things coming in. Lime speck pug is a new species that's in. The green carpets are still coming in, as are Scoparia ambigualis. It's nice to see a sheet with this amount of activity on it, and there will be more moths to come. The species list is creeping up too, so we're heading quickly towards 20 species, and it feels the 17 degrees centigrade that the thermometer is saying that it is. Well, this is just the back of the sheet. A couple of nice, quite dark white spotted pugs are coming, certainly very fresh ones. That's one I've just potted up. Decent range of species that you can see here at the moment. I don't know how well you will see these, but obviously you've got green carpet here and Scoparia ambigualis here, flame shoulder, another ambigualis, clouded silvers not long since come in, several pug species including lime speck pug, which I think I mentioned, but obviously some tattered oak tree pugs now, common pug as well. I love coming to this place. Well, I don't know what time we're on, because I honestly haven't had a chance to look at the time. We're on to 35 species, unless I've forgotten to put the odd micro down, which is possible, and species are coming in all the time. This, I think, is a better night than when I trapped here in May of last year. It certainly seems like it's a very different feeling to the night. That night started off with a bit of a rain shower, if I remember, but the moths then came in, but they're certainly coming in now, as you can see by the state of the sheet. Lots of insects, lots of flies, but also plenty of moths too. Lots of comings and goings. Knotgrass, there's a couple of them. These black arches, that's new, just come in. There's 1 or 2 micros, but not many. We're still suffering from that lack of micros. But time to go through that sheet again. I'm trying to get this to show well, because these rarely sit still for a photograph, even let alone any footage. But this is a small angle shades, and it's an absolute beauty. This one is pristine. It must have just hatched out today, because it's absolutely immaculate. A relatively dark moth, but beautifully, almost velvet like. There's that dark bar across the 4 wings, and then that cream kidney shaped mark on the wings as well, and a darker edge to the 4 wings. The thorax is dark as well. It's in all this is a beautiful moth, fabulous thing. But say, they rarely ever settle like this. A nice one to get. A common moth, one that will occur regularly if you trap in an urban or suburban garden. Nearly being mobbed there by one of the many flame shoulders that are here. It's getting very busy. But this small angle shades is a true beauty. This is what I like about Misson Carr. It's just the sheer number of insects that you get. It really keeps you extremely busy. You're having to look all the time to what is coming in where, what you've missed. And it's surprising how you do miss species. Very, very busy. And the tiny flies that are behind the light are like a carpet. Thousands of very small midges, but plenty of moths. Tiny flies getting in unwanted places is something you have to get used to doing this. Not everywhere has such a high population of diptera, I must admit. This place does. But it also has lots of moths. Now hopefully this moth won't get battered away, but this is a white ermine. Two common ermines in the UK, white ermine here and buff ermine. White ermine, in my experience trapping in Nottinghamshire, is the less likely to be trapped of the two. Buff ermine is by far the commoner, but it's a very attractive moth. Same family as the tiger moths, but this is another one of those moths that gets neglected. I mean, look at the abdomen, which we get a view of there as this one starts to warm up. But a very attractive moth, common and widespread, but in less numbers than buff ermine. And the large beast you saw briefly then is a buff tip. Maybe that'll settle down. I'm being bombarded. There are plenty of moths that are bombarding me, but the real bombardment is coming from hundreds and hundreds of biting midges. I can feel them biting me, and they're what's making up most of this. It's not the mosquitoes that are a problem now, it's these midges. However, the good news is two nice county moths, one rare county moth, and this is probably the only site where it's regularly recorded, and it's a birch mocha, which has not long come in. Quite a pale one as well. It's a real rarity. I remember last year being extremely pleased and excited at catching one. It was a moth that I'd always wanted to catch, and it's only really found here and at the Idle Valley Nature Reserve near Retford. The other moth is a micro, but it's a really attractive, quite unusual micro, and it's Spuleria flavicaput. There's a name that trips off the tongue, but that's a moth rarely recorded, I know many people don't record micro moths, but it really is an absolute beauty. It's an almost black moth, or really dark grey moth, but there are sort of tufts of black hair on it, and the head is yellow. So that's going back home for some better photographs. So two nice moths which arrived at about the same time as all these midges. I've never seen or experienced midges like this. Well, I know when I trapped here in May of last year, I had the sheet on the floor then, but I certainly didn't get this amount of moths. We're probably on about 40 species, to be honest now, if not slightly over. I didn't think to get anywhere near that. I thought, yes, over 26, maybe 30, and they're still coming in. That breeze has completely gone now, and it is still warm. Temperature's still 16 or 17. There's another flame shoulder. It's a good night for flame shoulders, as well as midges. And most of the moths are settling nicely on the sheet here. I'm laid prone on the floor, but it's not something I usually do during a moth trapping video. The last time, I think, was the great Mobile du jour incident, or footage, shall we say, of autumn 2022. What a fabulous moth Mobile du jour is. Here's another one, very different to the Mobile du jour, and this is a buff tip. And the reason why I'm showing you with the buff tip on the end of my finger is because many people, when they trap or see one of these moths during the day, tend to photograph it like this, or they will try and replicate where this moth goes during the day. Now, most moths will rest on tree trunks. They'll tuck themselves away in leaf litter, deep in vegetation, underneath leaves, on top of leaves, in a whole range of places. But this chap doesn't. This chap seeks out a branch and will rest, usually lengthways along the branch. And the idea for doing that is that the pale area on the end of the wings here, the buff tip, or the front of the thorax, replicates a freshly snapped twig. And it works. It's a brilliant, simple but brilliant bit of camouflage. It makes you wonder how some moths develop their own way of camouflage. But the buff tip has. It's one species that has, and it's a terrific moth. The thing about buff tips I often find as well is that when they come into the light, they seem enormous. They seem almost as large, and indeed they are as large as some hawk moths. And then when they're all tucked up and at rest like this, they seem half the size. But what a fabulous moth, and what a unique method of camouflage. Well, once again, it's this sheet. I know it's not all moths, but it's just the activity and the amount of insects on this sheet that's the real star of the show. Obviously, the star moth at the moment is the birch mocha. I'm going to give it a bit longer, see what else comes in. I've got plenty of tea in the flask. That's always a good way to gauge how long to run a trap for, and we'll see what else comes in. We're on to 44 species, and that's tremendous. I'm very pleased with 44 species, especially in May. I've probably never had 44 species in May, and the moths are still coming in. I'll try and quickly go through these. The large moth in the centre, the large geometrid, is a pale oak beauty. 15-20 years ago, I'd have been screaming about this moth being on the sheet, but it's slowly and steadily increased its range in the county. I remember Dillis and I catching one of these, and I know it was significant at the time. I don't think it was the first for the county, I'm not sure, but it was possibly the first for many years. But now it's regularly caught at a number of sites. Just below that, flicking its wings there, that's a small phoenix. Green carpet above that, a ruby tiger and white ermine. A nice selection of moths there, just in one go. Saves me a lot of trouble, that does. Well, it's 0:35 and I'm going to call it a night at that. It's quite a milestone. Got 50 species, but there are a couple of micros to ID as well, so the count will be 2 or 3 species more than that. So I'm going to begin the process of packing away, and I'll leave you with one more look at the sheet. I didn't dream that it would be as busy, this sheet, as it's been. It just shows the magic of this place. Lots of magic to come throughout the year.